Hey YouTube, Rick Marks here. Just wanted today to touch on, are leaders born or are they created? And I've touched on it before, and I really think that a lot of it comes down to the amount of effort. So everything will require effort, but for some people the effort is easier than others. And some of them it's more natural, or their tolerance is possibly bigger for being able to palate it. I think a lot of the time when you're looking at leaders, some of them are really good. Some are just managers and they're bosses, and they use a fixed mindset. I'm right, I have all the answers, I'm so good, look at my achievements, versus the growth mindset where it's like, I'm still learning. My job is just a different job to yours. I'm not a big believer myself in like corporate hierarchy. I realize for some elements you need to have that framework and the structure. But I'm more of a believer in we're all part of a motor, for instance, like in a car, and you've got your pistons, you've got your piston rings, you've got all the components, the crankshafts and chains that join them. And I think that's the best way to view a company, is in the shape and the form of a motor in a car. Because when you actually think of it that way, no part in that motor or engine, for want of a better term, is more important than the other. Is a spark plug more important than a piston? Is an inlet manifold more important than an exhaust manifold? Like, they all have their part and they all have their part to play, but they all somewhat are useless on their own. And I think that's where a lot of companies go wrong. They don't understand that the engine components on their own are as good as just a piece of metal, or in the spark plate, it's just ceramic. And I think companies often try to, I've seen it a lot, where companies try to take, say, a spark plug and use it as a piston. So the purpose is not aligned. The spark plug cannot do the job of a piston. I've also seen companies that try to move people where they need those parts filled. And that doesn't work either, because that person's purpose, that person's way of thinking, that person's perspective doesn't work into that role. And so when you start to change the view of, we're no longer looking at a corporate, you're at the top, you're the CEO. The CEO I liken to almost being, with electronic fuel injection, you've got the ECU, the electronic controller unit, and that's the brains, and that tells, spark plug the fire, it tells the fuel to spray into the chamber. Like, it orchestrates it all. And I see that, and that without that brain, the engine itself won't know what to do. The pistons won't know when, the crank sensors are there. Like, all those components require that ECU to tell it when to do its bit. And I think that that's the best way to view a company moving forward into like newer ages. Corporate hierarchy, it was fantastic back when that was very much rigid structure, and all the bottom feeders or staff or minions, whatever term you want to utilize, the worker bees, they're just as important a cog and a piece within that engine. And when they're out of sync, you've now got a timing issue. And whether you've got a technical background or not, like myself with motors and stuff, once you have a timing issue, things don't fire when they should, things don't work as smooth as they could. The engine will still go, it will still power on, but not as efficiently. And so that's when maybe you service the vehicle yourself and you can no longer necessarily diagnose, and that's where you take it to a specialist, a mechanic. And they can run all their tests and try to work out where the timing is. Now, sometimes the timing issue can be in the ECU, telling things to fire at the wrong time, or it's getting wrong data from, say, the air sensor, telling it there's X amount of airflow or the temperature, and so its intakes are creating the wrong outputs and telling the wrong things to do the wrong thing at the wrong time. So I think that's the best way looking at how your company runs, and running it like an engine and not like a corporate hierarchy, and trying to understand each of those components and what they need to be more efficient. Like I see work in itself, the outputs, the what you're doing for your clients, that's the oil. And once you've no longer got any oil in an engine, it seizes up. And that's essentially what happens to a company. When you have no more cash coming in, when you've got no more inputs coming through, you've got no more clients coming to your shop, what happens? The company dries up, and they have more expenditure, not enough income, and so there's a leak, and that's where, again, oil leaks come from somewhere. There's something in there that's not attuned right. So we're going to continue to grow on that a little bit, because that's something that I am a big believer in, changing the view, changing the way we think about business, changing the way we operate. But rather than thinking of people and everyone as like a funnel going up, or, you know, I've heard thinking, you know, let's go top down, bottom up management, you know, it's the people, the worker bees that, you know, are the important. And I've heard managers and CEOs talk about how important staff are, but then they turn their back, and then all of a sudden things aren't attuned or running as smooth or as good as they could, and the company starts to suffer from that. And it can start only by a small little oil leak. But that little oil leak over time will deplete the reservoir of oil, and you will no longer have that there. So just change the perception, change the thinking, the way it works. We're all important in a company. Everyone has something to contribute, and I don't think it's important for one person. There's no point in a chain looking at a cog and going, well, you're not doing the same thing I am. Of course they're not. Their purpose is not the same. There are some parts in that engine that run hotter and work harder than others, and that's natural. You're going to have people in any company that are going to work harder. That's just the way they are. And you've got people who may not work as hard, but as long as the output's happening, and as long as the company's achieving its objectives, then you're all good. That's it for today. Have a fantastic day, and you'll see me tomorrow morning. Have a good day. Bye.